it's really nice to have you here and kind of talk about your past experiences of being a young dad's worker. So what I would like to start off with is, could you tell us about what your role was in the organisation that you were in?
Yeah, definitely. So essentially, Adam, started off as a role. It started off as a pilot, so it was part of the teenage pregnancy strategy. So that was a 10-year strategy where it was to work with teen parents and teen mums in particular. But we thought to maximise that, we'd do a pilot about engaging with young fathers as well. So did the pilot, which proved to be really successful in engaging with our young fathers, getting them into sure starts and, you know, dealing with other issues. So from that, my post came into being. So it was a full-time post, and it meant I was working alongside our midwives and health visitors and teenage pregnancy advisors to engage young fathers, you know, up to the age of 25, you know, into support, early years support particularly.
What does inclusive support mean to you in terms of working with young dads?
Mm-hmm. Inclusive support, first and foremost, means that dads are brought from being invisible to be made visible, because often, you know, and historically in, you know, supporting our young mums, the dads have not been seen. And we now know to be inclusive, to give best opportunities to young families and to babies and children, is to include both parties. Yeah, so working with dads, it's about recognizing them, making them visible, and including them in the whole support process, from the first stage of finding out you're going to become a parent to postnatal as well. So inclusively means making sure services are orientated towards you know, recognizing fathers to be, and fathers have a role to play. So they're seen by the midwives, they're seen by the health visitors, they're seen by the hospital services and early years services as well.
Support kind of for dads is and all their diversity is incredibly important, hence why we're doing this research, and us as a project wanting to be a bit more diverse and kind of help those communities as well. Do you think the organisation that you were in was doing enough of that, kind of tapping into these diverse communities? And if so, could you tell us a little bit about how your organisation done that?
So yeah, so in terms of like diverse communities, we can be looking at communities to do with, you know, different neighborhoods, different classes, but also different ethnicities as well. So because we were a Newcastle-wide service, and because a lot of our funding was from the local authority, having diversity was part of our sort of like a reach, you know, making sure it was representative of the general population or the demographics of that age group. So what we would do would make our service as inclusive as possible. Hard to reach communities sometimes exist, so we just go out of our way, be assertive in reaching hard to reach communities. So that might be young fathers who don't feel they need the service, or they've got other issues, but equally, you know, in terms of working in Newcastle, and a lot of our young parents were from the sort of like West End of Newcastle and the East End of Newcastle, where it's high diversity, different ethnic groups as well. We'd make sure that we were responsive and you know, sensitive to different cultural needs, and work in a way that was bespoke to what that might need as well.
That's brilliant. And just kind of a final question for me, what kind of barriers did you find working with these communities, where did you feel like they were quite big kind of barriers? Did you need support from other services? What did that look like essentially?
What we didn't find is that it was a coherent group. So if you had, say, someone from, say, mixed cultural background, say Afro-British background, they may not have aligned themselves to that kind of classification. They just saw themselves as a young father. Equally, we work with people from Eastern Europe, might have like a Roma background. So Roma communities, whilst they might have some common cultural stuff, they don't see themselves as just like one monolith block. So we thought individualized approach, just seeing the person who they are, but whilst recognizing there might be barriers, but working with that like we would work with anyone who might have barriers, whether that's class, religion, you know, wherever they came from. So it's just like being sensitive, being culturally appropriate, and just being assertive outreach, just making sure that if there's a barrier that you might have, whether that's to do with language or nuances, it's just trying to work through them and seek and get resources if you need them, but don't see them as a barrier that can't be overcome. There's always ways of working through it.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries.
And what I'm going to do is pause the recording there. So
Yeah.
that's great.